Hello, let us continue discussing the GS paper 1 of 2022. Why was there a sudden spurt in famines in colonial India since mid 18th century? Give reasons. Obviously, we know that famines are natural happenings which can happen anywhere, anytime. But from the mid 18th century, that is from 1750 onwards, there was an increased spurt in famine or increased frequency of famine. Back-to-back famines were happening. We know that it was due to the apathy of British towards the Indians. So what could be the reasons? We know that if you classify the reasons, first of all, there are some inefficient policies of British towards controlling famine. Then the policies were completely for exporting all the food products from India, and their policies didn't care about the famine affected areas. Then if there is anything happening at the ground, okay, when people are starving, they were celebrating with a feast and dinner parties, that kind of thing. That means like no sympathy to the people starving because they were foreigners and they don't care for the native people. Then if there are some natural factors like along with these British policies, so you can also comment on that thing. So coming to our first dimension, that is British economic policies. What were the policies? We know that when people are starving, they were in for completely raising the tax and revenue demands. Permanent Settlement Act of 1793. We know that zamindars were demanded with very high revenue, and zamindars couldn't pay that much money because there were no production in the ground. So zamindars were evicted. So there is no protection for the people, no agriculture support and all. So famine. Then what is the next policy? Shift to cash crops. Instead of supporting food grain production to cope up with the famine, they asked or forced the people, for example in the region of Champaran, to grow indigo for exporting in the international market. Then when there is famine, for example in 1876 and 1878, instead of transporting the food grains to the affected areas, they took all these food grains to export to England. Then economic drain. When these particular areas are starving, when the need was for supporting agriculture, instead of doing that, they took all the wealth and taxes for their own interest. For example, in the Suez Canal construction, they took away all the Indian wealth and like invested there. Okay, so that is one thing. Then laissez-faire economics. That means in Orissa, when famine was going on in 1866, you know the Great Famine of India was in 1876 1878 period. In the case of Orissa, 10 years before that, okay, 1866, at that time, instead of distributing the rice of Orissa to the starving areas of Orissa, they exported the Orissa rice to England. So they told that this is laissez-faire policy, that is free market policy, we cannot intervene in the market. That was their explanation. Then lack of indigenous decision making. That means when people are starving, these rulers have no idea what is happening in the ground. For example, during the Great Famine of 1876-78, we know that the infamous Lytton was the viceroy at that time. So what he did was he celebrated the declaration of Queen Victoria as the like head of India. To celebrate that, he arranged lavish dinner parties, feast and all. So this highlights the disparity between the British decisions and the Indian realities. So they were having no idea what's happening in the ground. Then apart from all these things, there were natural factors. We know that in 1876 El Nino was happening, and this led to monsoon failures, finally led to the great famines of 1876 and 1878. So these were the broad reasons why there was back-to-back famines during the British India. So we should conclude that, okay, while natural phenomena is playing a role in the famines of colonial India, we cannot deny the fact that British colonial policies were like significantly magnifying the impacts of events. That means when Great Famine was happening, they arranged the feast, they magnified the impact. When Orissa famine was happening in 1866, they exported the rice from Orissa instead of giving there. So this magnified the impact. If they had done something to like reduce the impact, it could have been controlled. So these kind of things. So the economic reasons, the administrative reasons, like lack of distribution kind of thing, the environmental factors, all together combined under the British Raj, creating a like tragic situation of famine in India, like back to back. So in that way you can conclude. Thank you.